Welcome back to the Business Roundtable Podcast. I'm your host of your guest and a host, all in one. David Carr, steward your business. I've got my guest here, Joel Clelland, who I've known for years. We're going to get into a great word for this episode. We were just talking right before we recorded this. I have known Joel, for over 20 plus years. I lost count, but Joel is a great friend, a great colleague. He has just a vast array of experience. He's particularly been in the education space for quite a while, but he's an entrepreneur. He is a musician. He's worked with nonprofits, and he has just got a wealth of experience. And so, welcome to the Business Roundtable Podcast, Joel. Glad to have you here.
Thank you, David.
Super excited to have you here. Joel and I have been talking about, hey, let's do an episode. What could that be? And we're going to kind of talk about a couple of different things. But I really like the word that Joel brought up as we were brainstorming about what do we want to talk about in this episode. And the word ambition came up. And, that word can be positive to some, and hopefully it is to Joel and I, but it could also be negative to others. And we're going to kind of talk and unpack this ambitious life as a leader, as a business owner, as a father, as a husband. How do we do all these things in this crazy life? And so I really thought, Joel, I really liked you bringing up that word ambition. So we're going to dig into that. But before we dig into that word, I want you, Joel, to share about your ambitious life, what you got you here. So give us a brief high level of, where you came from. You and I met back, I think, in the college days or right around.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
And then
it was
we had
definitely around that time
and things, right? But your journey to where you are now in business in particular, and we're going to get into family life and other things. But just walk us through who you are, Joel, and a little bit for our audience so they get to know you a little better.
For sure. And David, if I recall, we definitely crossed paths in the mobile disc jockey world.
Yes, we did. Yes.
For many years.
That was another world, right? We were both mobile DJs, MC, music. Absolutely.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
I've been married to my wonderful wife for coming up on 28 years. And one of the things I was thinking about as I was getting ready to hop on your show was I'm a married father of 5 trying to make things happen in 2025 Southern California.
Yes.
And I know at times it's rather exhausting, to be honest. Mentally and emotionally and physically. That being said, I would trade any of it for all the money in Fort Knox. Which
the goal, who knows what's in there?
I know, exactly. But I've, like you said, I've been hanging my hat in the education space for many years. I dabbled in the insurance industry for well over 10 to 15 years. And I ran a company for almost 3 years in the digital currency space.
Mm-hmm.
And it's interesting, that word ambition, because I've been in conversations where that just the word itself has come up, and I've gotten 2 different takes on the word. And some people they think that it's a bad thing because I don't know. I'm sure there's some time on the therapist's couch that they'll need to work through for that. But at the end of the day, I think as long as you keep your ego in check and your just your ability to care for yourself and others in check, why not be as amazing as you can be, whatever that means for you. And whether that's for athletes or for business people or people operating in any sector, and even just personal development, like what's next for me. I turned 50 a couple of years ago, and I was thinking to myself, I don't want to retire. I know people my age that are getting broken down, have disabilities, and they're thinking about stopping what they've been doing for many years. And I just, the word retire, the definition is to put out of use, be put out to pasture. And I don't want to be put out to pasture. I want to visit pastures, the serenity of a pasture,
sure, right?
But I don't want to be put out of use. I don't believe I'll ever fully retire, but I think because retirement as a concept is a very it's a fairly new concept, you know,
Mhm.
in the human timeline, if you will.
Yep.
I mean, I think we can talk about that. We can talk
Yeah.
about that people as individuals should really decide for themselves, what's best for me? What's best for
Yeah.
my family? I know you're probably looking for some evergreen content, but you're not going to get that out of me. I will say this: Warren Buffett, 94 years old, is still working.
Yes.
Now, and he's got his young 62-year-old replacement coming down from Canada
Yeah,
to
right?
take over the company. But that being said, I'm inspired by him. I don't always agree with him, but it's inspiring, I think.
Yeah,
This is
no.
someone this is someone who found something he loves, and he's been doing it for over half a century.
Well, I wanna jump in there, Joel, because I just recorded another episode of the Business Roundtable podcast, actually, earlier today. I was recording that, and I was talking with a woman in her early 50s. She started her, company. You guys can check it out. It's called with Martika, about the green economy, and,
Beautiful.
she has, and this is, quite a while later, number of years later, so she was really encouraging you. So I agree. I started Steward Your Business. I'm 51. I started Steward Your Business about almost 2.5 years ago, going on 3 years. And so, if you're feeling the calling to do this, now this is, I think, to the ambition point, Joel, sometimes people get in for the wrong reasons, and maybe that's why ambition is maybe
That's probably
negative,
true.
right? Because most of the time, the ambition is, well, I want to make a lot of money. And I talk with any small business owner, if that's your reason for getting into business, you're not gonna make it. Whatever that ambition is, like, I just want to be, especially, or if you want to be somebody else, not truly who you are, but you're like, well, I have this ambition, and we can be inspired, and I think, and that's not a bad thing, but we have to find ourselves in our own journey. Otherwise, the ambition, may be misguided, and so you have to check. I think, like you said, check
Hmm.
it, Joel.
Yeah.
What is it? Ultimately, I think both you and I have a strong desire to serve others, come from a place of abundance. And so if we're coming from a place of abundance and we get to, it's not that we have to, we get to serve, we get to bring, um, whatever we have, our talents, our gifts, and abilities, then I agree with you. The ambition is a positive thing because we're trying to be a blessing. We're trying to look after others. That's the word of my company: steward your business, stewarding, watching over. So that's never, I agree with you, Joel. It's never done. It's never like, well, I
Hmm.
just checked the box. I mean, I
Right.
hate to say it. I hear people say that. I mean, even, you and I come from a background in Christianity and background, and people, I will hear people, some say, well, I did my time. I did my
I
work. I'm
did
like,
my time.
what? Like,
Yeah.
is there an end? It's like, do we not wanna
Right.
keep sharing good news and sharing
Excuse me.
blessings? Like, well, I just
Hmm.
wanna hold them in. Like, that's
Hmm.
kinda what I hear about you say retire. Like, I did this, and now I'm just gonna consume and sit over here instead
Right.
of, like,
Can I share
looking
two
towards
things
this.
about that? Can I
Yeah,
share two
please,
things
go right
about
ahead.
Well, first I'll start with the word identity just came up in my
Mhm.
mind. And I was thinking, it's like you don't have to stop being who you are, whoever that wonderful
Yep.
person is.
Mhm.
You want to lean into that. But the
Yep.
other piece is, you know, when do I stop serving? Do I stop
Yep.
serving at a certain age? Do I keep working and serving until my last breath?
Mhm.
I one of my dear friends and a client, he's 82 years old, and he just lost his wife to cancer just a few months ago. And this gentleman, I meet with him periodically. He's kind of lost, to be perfectly
Mm.
honest. I mean, she
Mhm.
was all of his life for him. She was his
Mhm.
caregiver. She was, the biggest thing in his life. And the thing I just keep telling him, I just tell him over and over again, sir, you need to ask God what's next for me.
Mhm.
Why was I left behind? My wife
Right.
is a few years younger than me. Why was she taken and not me? I wish I had have been taken. And
Mm.
I just encourage him. I'm like, that's the wrong place to be
Oh,
at.
100%. I mean, Joel, a fun story, because I just went to, here locally in Southern California, there was RetroCon this past weekend, which was kind of a fun little convention.
Sounds fun.
Yeah, it was fun. It was, but I got to meet two well-known actors, creators. I'll name drop here, but John Ratzenberger, if you've known him, John Ratzenberger, voice actor who was in Cheers, Cliff. And I asked him, are you doing any of the projects? He said, of course. As long as I can work, I'm never going to retire.
Love
There's
it.
always something to do. It's just your point, Joel, hey, as long as God's allowing me to do it, I'm going to do it. And I thought, here's a guy that has had tremendous success. He's on Cheers. He's, you've heard him on all the different movies and voiceovers and all the
Right.
Disney and Pixar stuff, right? He was even in Empire Strikes Back for our Star Wars geeks.
That's right. That's right. In the first trilogy.
Yeah, in the original
the original trilogy.
And so here is a man that is saying, hey, no, I'm still gonna go. And I had a really great conversation with him. And then the other conversation, among other folks, there's a couple great people I met, but the other one that I just thought was fascinating was Sid Croft, if you remember him from the Land of the Lost and all these shows from the 70s. He's 95 years old.
Wow.
I got to meet him. 95 years old.
That is so neat.
And just, he's out there, sitting out there, meeting with fans, signing things, just engaging folks. He does a weekly podcast that he does on his Instagram. So there's a way of, because if you're creative, or it doesn't matter if you're creative now, whatever that gift is for you, I think otherwise you're right, Joel, because I feel like otherwise you see people kind of give up in life. It doesn't really matter what age. I mean, I think you see people just disconnect.
Right? That's right. And it's almost like they put their hand up.
Yeah.
It's like, I'm done. I'm like, you're done. No, when I'm baking, there are things that are done. But I mean, I'll be baking forever.
Right. Right. And you've navigated so many different things. And that's why I want to encourage folks that maybe feel stuck or in a rut. Don't feel like that's the end of the road. Like you said, I'm done. There's an opportunity. I like the word pivot. What is it that you're not in the Friends pivot, if you've ever watched that episode, but pivot meaning, we're adjusting and we don't have to make a wide swing. It's not like whole hard. It's just all it is a slight movement to the left or to the right. Right. And so that way, misplaced maybe ambition or misplaced identity can be recorrected, refocused into a much more healthier version. And what I found, Joel, for myself is this is done usually, at least for me, has been done in community and connection with others. It's sharing, expressing where I'm at, getting feedback, and there's a course correction. But if you're siloed or if you're alone or isolated, really hard in my experience, not possible, but it's more difficult to get clearer on your identity, your purpose. Is this ambition in alignment? And so it's finding trusted advisors, trusted people that you can come into your life. Bill, you and I have talked over the years, sharing, and whether it's professional or personal, it crosses over. And so, so yeah, I so appreciate you. And I hope as people are watching this and listening, if you don't have somebody in your life, like I and Joel have a relationship, or others that you've heard on this podcast, by all means, it's worth the investment to find those people
100%
that maybe are further along in their journey. I think it's two things, Joel, and I'd love your thoughts on this. Two things. It's finding people further along, what I'd say to your right of you, that you can lean into, whatever areas that is in your life. Is it business? Is it your relationship? Is it you're taking care of yourself physically, spiritually, whatever that is? Because when we look to the right and we look at that person, there's always somebody further ahead. But also, there is somebody to the left of us that we are further ahead. Believe it or not, we are further ahead than somebody else. So who else can we leave a hand and to lift up, to share, to pour into? So I really think it's a two-way that we are both being mentored and finding others and mentoring others with whatever you have. I love your thoughts on that, Joel.
It's amazing how connected we are, David. Because where you went was exactly where I was headed to. It's fascinating to me. One of my coaches actually texted me about 45 minutes before we went on today.
Oh wow!
And he and I haven't talked in a couple of months or so, at least. And I'm like, why is he texting me today? And I had to check my phone just now because I want to get the words correct. And his text was, "What's the next pursuit?" ? So he obviously knows that I'm up to something.
Yep.
And the question you have to ask yourself is, what are you up to? What's the next thing that you're developing? And believe it or not, there's two things I'm developing right now. And I'm not going to get into it on this program, but you have to have those soundboards in your life. You have to have those people in your life that, number one, see your blind spots. That's why we get coaches in the first place. It's like, where am I deficient? Where do I need to improve? But then, like David said, those people who are a little further along in whatever your pursuit is. What's that thing? Maybe it's health and fitness. Maybe it's business. Maybe it's managing assets, maybe it's
Mhm.
something else entirely, and aligning with those people. I,
Mhm.
I I would say the greatest blessing I have on God's green earth in this lifetime that I've had is not just being connected with people like you, David, but
Mhm.
I constantly find myself in the right circles,
Mm. Yeah.
surrounded by people, and I'm like, why do I get this blessing? Why do I get to work with this amazing person or this
Mhm.
amazing team? And it's common for me.
Yep.
I talk with people on the other side that they're always looking for the doom and gloom. It's like, how can
Mhm.
I get out of this situation? I'm
Yep.
waiting for the next shoe to drop, and
Yep.
I just don't live my life that way.
Yeah.
You can't have positive outcomes with a negative mind.
No, well, to your point, Joel, I think that's why, you naturally, whether you call it the law of attraction or whatever you wanna call it, manifestation, whatever the case may be. I do believe that there's a point where you bring up bright light, you bring that energy, like I said, coming from a place of an abundance mindset, like there is more than enough.
Hmm.
I believe that's a natural attractant, the others are pulled to that. And so and then and on the same token, that negative mindset or whatever also is a attracts negative. So think of polarity, right? So
Hmm.
you have the
Yep.
positive and the negative, but so you're gonna pull like-mindedness, whatever that might be. So you're choosing to put yourself in this place of hey, can do, possibilities. You're seeing what I call the gain rather than the gap, and others are drawn to that and they want to be a part of that. I literally was talking to this woman, like I said earlier, Marika, who's in the sustainability space. We're talking about how do we do that? Well, when you have a mindset like that, it's just remarkable
Hmm.
and it's so much different than a lot of others. And
Hmm.
so I think one way that we've been successful, Joel, as I think not just businessmen, but husbands and fathers, is that we put ourselves in that space of being with others that want to rise, that want to step up,
Yep.
whatever that looks like. And to me, the more of those, generally speaking, are better. Whether it's your church, whether it's scouts, whether it's a nonprofit group, whatever that is, they're on a mission to lift up. They're a mission to help rise. And for most, that to me is important. I really counsel, particularly my environmental space, Joel. Over the
Hmm.
years, a young biologist, like I said, look, get involved with some kind of nonprofit. They all need help. They all need volunteers, and
100%.
it's a great way to connect, and it's a great way to learn and give back. And in turn, you'll benefit as well, but just
Hmm.
look at a way. And I think, but a lot of people are waiting on the sidelines and not getting engaged like you're doing, Joel.
Hmm.
Um, you know, and just speak a little bit because I know you've been involved with a number of nonprofits. I'd love to just hear a little bit because what that has been for you.
I would say that part of it gets to the striver thriver
Mhm.
dichotomy, if you will. There is the voice that's like, okay, what's in this for me?
Mhm.
Is this going to be a win-win? And then there's the other side where it's like, you know what, I have some value to provide, and I'm just going to
Yes.
start providing it
Mhm.
and help where I can. I mean, we've all been in networking groups,
Mhm.
and we haven't gotten what we think we've put into the group.
Yep.
Um, or we've been in a situation where we've given and given and given, and we look back and we're like,
Yep.
you know what, I don't think that was a valuable exchange or fair exchange. But that being said, I think you gave great counsel to the young people coming up that you've got something to give.
Mhm.
I think about my own family. I mean, I've got 5 kids that I get to coach in a way.
Yep.
And what am I modeling to them? What am I modeling
Mhm.
to my wife? And,
Mhm.
and that's just our little team here.
Yeah.
When I branch out to my place of employment, like you said, the places where I sit on boards. Right now,
Mhm.
I sit on one board, and uh, how am I showing up?
Yeah.
And when I'm there, am I thinking about looking at the clock and thinking, okay, I can't wait for this meeting to be over, or am I thinking, okay, how can I add value here?
Mhm. That's a
Eh,
great,
eh,
great point.
how can I be the leader that they brought me aboard to be?
Mhm.
I have this amazing opportunity to lead with leaders within that context, and how am I adding value to these amazing people?
Right. And sometimes
Am I bringing something that they can use?
I love that, Joel. Like, how am I bringing value? One thing you mentioned earlier, you've been successfully married for 28, going on 28 years here. I was talking to
And Dave,
another.
can I just share
Yeah,
one thing?
please.
And am I holding back?
Oh, mm-hmm,
And where am I holding back?
mm-hmm,
So
mm-hmm.
I thought that
No,
was pretty important.
no, absolutely. What am I bringing value? What am I holding back? I think
Am
these
I
are
holding
all good
anything
questions.
back?
Am I holding anything back?
Yeah.
Um, and oftentimes I think we all are to a certain degree, and so it's having good counsel and other people in your life. I think one of the things I talk about, particularly in my Intelligent Human Leadership podcast, but I think it's worthwhile speaking here, is you're talking. I'm been coming up married almost 20 years, you 28 years, and I was talking to another entrepreneur today about he's building a big business. He's got a lot of things going on, and he was talking to another entrepreneur, and one of the things he said to this entrepreneur and relate to me was, "Hey, make sure you involve your spouse or girlfriend, whatever the
Yep.
love of your life, in your ambition, in your visions." Not that they have to, they don't, they're not maybe actively involved, meaning like in the day to day, but make sure that they're aware, because you can be so, unfortunately, like you
Mhm.
said earlier, blind spots. And particularly, I'll just speak to men in particular, because I feel like this is more of a man thing, but ladies may have this too. But we kind of get mission focused, and again, the ambition is not a bad thing, but not without understanding and seeing the other ramifications
Mhm.
can be. And I believe, like you said, Joel, you've been successful. You're making it, being married for 28 years, having 5 kids. S- Sometimes, not always, but sometimes we can be so outside of the world, trying to create value, trying to give, and then we have nothing left to bring
Right.
back home, you
Mhm.
know? And so speak maybe to how
That's
you've been
right.
successful in navigating that, Joel.
Well, I haven't always been. I haven't
Me
always been
neither. Me
successful.
neither.
I
Not
haven't
always.
always been successful. Sometimes I'm going through life, and it's like running on fumes at times. But
Mhm.
it's interesting because the I would say that my counsel and my leadership, my personal leadership, whether it's a coach or the people that I'm operating with, has really just gotten so much better over time.
Mm.
And the
Mhm.
conversations are so much more high level. And it's interesting because the groups that I'm involved with and the people that I'm getting counsel from have all reminded me that the number one member of my team is my wife.
Mm.
She's the
Mhm.
number one member. And if I'm doing team planning, business planning, any kind of planning,
Mhm.
she's number one, and she needs to
Mhm.
be in the mix.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because that part of my life has gotten better,
Mhm.
because whenever I start getting creative, I always include her.
Mhm.
And it's like, okay, is this something that we need to be doing right now, or is this the direction we need to be taking this area of
Mhm.
our life right now?
Yeah.
Because this is what I'm thinking.
Mhm.
And having that sounding board, I think, is invaluable. And I think what happens with, because unfortunately not every relationship uh, goes the distance, and that goes
Mhm.
for marriages as well as businesses.
Yep.
and and the real question is, okay, well, how can we make this work? You've heard the whole work life balance thing, which we all
Mhm.
know is a myth. All of your time goes to the things that are the most important, and at some
Mhm.
point something suffers so that you can learn, oh yeah, that was pretty important
Mhm. Yep.
at the end of the
Yep.
day.
Well, what do they say? Look at your calendar and where you spend, and that's pretty much indicator what your priorities are. And so,
Hmm.
if those are not the way you really, what happens is sometimes I call the drift. Some things these just start filling up, and you're like, whoa, 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 hold on, this isn't where I want. I like the analogy of like flying a plane, and you're
Hmm.
just off like 1 degree, and before you know it, you're going to be in a completely different location. So it's like doing a regular audit and looking at those things is not a bad thing, and reassessing. In fact, we used to call it one of the companies, we call it meeting creep. Like these meetings would keep popping in,
Hmm.
and a lot, and then we would say like, and then we go the other way. We like no meetings, and we're like, okay, well that doesn't work either, right? So it's like,
Right, right.
where do we get
Where's
right
the
back
happy
to
medium?
equilibrium, right? And
Yeah.
and whether it's your wife or team members, sometimes we'll get feedback, right? Like, hey, I'm not sure about this. I have some different reservations, and we're like, no, we're gonna go. I've got the mission. This is gonna happen, and
Right.
we discount
Right.
whether it's like our spouse or other team members to our own peril,
I agree.
because we have an ego. We have we're blinded. Quite honestly, I call us we're lying to ourselves. We're not living in truth. We're just kind of believing in there's something that's further out there that really isn't accurate. And if we don't have a foundation and understanding and get back to the baseline benchmark, the truth of what it is, everything else is kind of built on a house of cards. So
I
I
agree.
just right. I mean,
Hmm.
but it is hard at times because it requires us to be humble. It requires us to kind of put aside our uh, you know, even though the ambition might be good, the way we're going to go about it, how we're going to get there needs to be adjusted. And it's like,
Hmm.
okay, are you coachable? Are you teachable? And I think that's really important too.
Hmm. Yeah, I agree.
Mm,
100%. It's and humility is its own meditation, if you will.
mm,
No matter where you're at in your day, no matter where
mhm.
you're at in your week or your month or your quarter, right?
Yep.
This is business we're talking about,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
How are we doing? We're
Yep.
Q2. We're
Mhm.
halfway through.
Yep.
Where are
Here
we
we are,
at?
May. Yep. When we're
Right.
recording this.
But
Yep.
it's fascinating to me, David, that there's nothing new under the sun.
That's
There really
true.
isn't. I've worked in so many businesses and so many institutions, and there are those things that have become obsolete.
Mhm.
And you were talking about, the person you were working with or interviewed
Mhm.
that's in sustainability.
Mhm.
I work with a gentleman who's on the smart city side
Yep.
and future tech and things like that. And I think we're living in a time when certain things are going to become obsolete. And
Mm.
leaders how many leaders are holding on to old systems and old ways and old mindsets and old
Mhm.
tech because they think that it's a need, or they've never even asked the question, why are we still doing this?
Right.
Why are we still using this?
Right. Well, I think to your point, Joel, on that is there's a we like to stay. I think as a human being, as change and the way our brains work, we don't like change. And it seems like change for change's sake, right? But it's not that. But we
It's
like even
comfort.
if it's not
Comfort.
good, even
Yeah.
if it isn't good, but it's known, right? It's known. So energetically, I don't have to really think about it. But when we have what they call disruptors, right? People I call the pioneer voice,
Hmm.
they stick out in a good way, but also to the world, sometimes it's like, "Why are you messing with things? Why are you going
Right.
around?" And
Right. Right.
because they see, or I call them the pioneers or creatives, particularly in the Five Voices framework, those folks are the ones that see possibilities. Now, they need people to help implement them. They're not implementers. They need people to come alongside to help realize the dream and the vision. I like to use the story of Walt Disney and Roy Disney. Walt Disney is this great Imagineer coming all these things, but Roy was like, "I'm actually gonna follow and make sure this gets done." We need both, and
Hmm.
it's not all. And so what I think is there's resistance on if you're not emotionally aware, whatever you want to call it, the emotional IQ, whatnot. But if you're not aware of this, then you can become frustrated, you can become walled off. Doesn't help. Everyone breaks down in the conversations, everyone goes to their corners, and then we're like, oh, we all lose.
That's true.
Right? We all lose. So it's like, okay, that's not the way that's not the
Right.
productive way to do it. But I mean, so
Yeah.
understanding and appreciating each other. And I think that's what you do, Joel, in a lot of your efforts and so many things. And I'm going to tap onto your musical background for a minute because Joel, you're an amazing musician. Um, but it's wonderful to hear a single guitar player go. But when you bring an ensemble together and they're all playing their parts, right? And they know where to come in and where to come out, where to raise the volume, where to decrease the volume. What
Hmm.
a different experience that is, right?
It's true. It's true. Now you played an instrument in the past. You
I
were a wind
played. I
wind
played. I
player,
actually, yeah.
sax player.
No, well,
Or,
actually,
no, what did you
I
play?
played a flute, a
Flavis.
trombone. I played a few different things over the years. Played a little guitar, piano.
Nice.
Um, but to the point, I feel like
Yeah, for
Joel is
sure.
that I like that analogy, and I feel like that's why you work well with folks because you understand that every part is important.
Right.
Right?
And when you figure out what your part is, either because you've chosen it or somebody chose it for you, you play your heart out. You work
Hmm.
hard on it.
Hmm.
There's a project that I'm working on right now, which it's going to be really fun when it goes public. But
Yep.
but I have a lot of work that I have to do
Hmm.
beforehand,
Hmm.
and I'll continue to have work to do. But
Yep.
I think that gets to integrity, doesn't it?
Hmm.
It's
Yep.
like, okay, well, you've chosen to do this. Now are you gonna choose to do the best that you can do?
Hmm.
Or are you just gonna kind of do it?
When you
Like,
say
yeah.
integrity, Joel, I want to follow up with that with another word to you. With ambition is commitment. What's your commitment? Because
Hmm.
and I've been married for quite a long time, so we made a
Yep.
commitment early on. I don't think
Hmm.
commitment's hard early on. It's easy to commit early
It
on,
is. It is when you're young and excited and
or whatever the new thing is, right? I think
yeah,
entrepreneurs,
exactly.
hey, this is the new thing.
Yeah, the
This is the
shiny
new
new
thing.
object.
I'm going to go to this, and who talks about this? There's a few different people that talk about this. Alex Hormozy, Gary V, others people. That the entrepreneur moves to the new thing,
Hmm.
and they didn't stay committed to what they actually said they were going to do,
Right.
and they're frustrated with why am I not winning?
Yeah.
Why am I not getting there? And to pull your point of then and then tie in the
Yeah.
integrity there.
Can I share something?
Yeah,
It's just from
please.
another coach, by the way.
Yes,
So
yes.
another coachism, but that's why everybody should have coaches. One of my coaches, she told me this years ago, and basically she said that if something doesn't serve you anymore, whether it's personally or your family or business, you still have to finish it, even if that means cutting it out. That's
Mhm.
part of finishing it as well.
Mhm. Yep.
Maybe you've got a strategic partnership that's not working for you anymore. You have a
Mhm.
toxic relationship in the market. You cutting that out is getting it done, finishing the
Absolutely.
job.
Love
You
that.
shouldn't leave all these unfinished jobs out there.
Yes.
And
Yes.
and it's like that's why I'm a firm believer in taking an inventory, whether it's quarterly or even
Mhm.
monthly or
Yep.
weekly if you need to look at your life, your business life, your personal life,
Mhm.
and analyze it and say, okay, what needs to be cut? Does
Yes.
anything need to be cut? What
Mhm.
needs to be added? And I think that's super valuable to do. And I think some people forget that piece. It's
Oh,
like,
it's
okay,
funny you mentioned that, Joel. I just spent 6 hours last week with about, 12, 14 other men going through our inventory,
interesting.
working through it.
Hmm.
Getting clear on it. That's one of the things I'm trained in with Wake Up Warrior tools and other things is like, how do we get clear on that? Because the drift happens. It's not if
Hmm.
I use multiple tools. I've got my full focus planner in here too, right here, my quarterly planner that I have
Beautiful.
in front of me. Because I'm constantly like, looking at these things. Like you said, I like to say, Joel, in a different way, what do I need to start doing? What do I need to
Hmm.
stop doing? What do I need to sustain doing? But if you don't make a decision, I think that what's the amount that it takes on your brain because you're holding space for that somewhere, and it's
That,
not resolution, right?
that's it. That's the piece. There's some element of whatever's unfinished that's in your mind,
Mhm.
and it's stealing the energy and the focus you need for whatever you really need to be doing.
Right.
You know, at the end of the day.
I
I
really
used to
like
talk
that.
about A files, B files, and C files. And C files you can just throw away. And the B files might, because I'm super creative, that might be something that I massage over time. But I've got to focus on the A files. They're the ones that produce the most
I
capital,
Yeah, whatever
resources,
that yeah,
and
that what
positive
it
energy for myself
Mhm.
and others
No,
at the end of
that's
the
true.
day.
And we're all sharing ideas here. One book I really liked years ago by David Allen called Getting Things Done, GTD for short. But
Hmm.
what he calls it is like, yeah, those things that you need to get done, the things you can delegate, and he calls it whatever your C file or B file would, but someday maybe file. Like, so if you want to hold on it for some reason, okay, just put it in that someday maybe, but you're
But
really
it's
not
still up
putting too much
here.
on it,
It's still
Yeah.
scratching away at your
So
time and
you
energy.
gotta but go through that inventory like you said and
Right.
determine, you know what? Nope, I can toss that out, And I think the clearer and the more simple we can do it, the better. And that also helps us stay, like you said earlier, I like the word integrity tied to commitment.
Mhm.
Oftentimes we're out of integrity. We're not we said we were gonna do something, this is what we're committed to, but we're not doing it. And unfortunately, you know, the where the we lie to ourselves more about these lies of not commission but omission. We're not being truthful with ourselves, and we're kind of like making excuses. And so when you do that, it perpetuates itself, and then that gets you off target. That definitely
It does,
does
100%.
not get you to
Yep.
where you want to go, right?
Yep. It does. It does. And
Mhm.
you lack peace at that point.
Mhm. Yes.
You know, it's the war within your mind.
Yes.
And you're
Yes.
losing that. You don't have freedom. You don't have peace.
Yes, absolutely. We've covered a lot here, and I know we could go on and on, Joel.
I'm like,
But
what
I
were we
think
getting on to talk about anyway?
I know, right? Well, yeah, ambition. No, but really, I think hearing from two men that are going through and like you said, in 2025, trying to take care of living. For those of you that not in California, different world, but California, in Southern California,
It's nuts.
we've had crazy weather events. We've had crazy, political things,
And the
initiatives,
my
fires,
goodness.
homelessness, we've just had a lot. And so how do we show up consistently, with integrity, living out it, like I like in a positive ambition to serve and lift up others. I hope as you're listening to this podcast, you're being encouraged. I'm gonna actually link Joel's contact information, so you can reach out to Joel if you have questions, you want to learn more about him and his background. He's just got a wealth of experience. I'm sure, Joel, you'll be happy to talk with folks.
Anytime.
Yeah, yeah. And
But if you try to
as
sell me cryptocurrency,
yeah,
I'll raise
right.
my eyebrow.
I've got a part-time. I get these texts. I got a part-time job for you. Like,
I love
no,
crypto, by the way.
yeah. But as we're wrapping up this conversation, and Joel, I'm definitely gonna have you come back. And I think having our part of a roundtable, we haven't had actually a good roundtable with a number of other guests, but we'd love to have you come back in there and have a further conversation with the panel. But as we're
Awesome.
we hit on a few keywords that from ambition to integrity, commitment, identity. What is it that you want the listener that's checking this in, whether you're the business owner, you're leading a team, maybe it's just you and you're just making your way through life. You happen to be in this podcast. You're like, what is listening to David and Joel today? But what would you leave parting words or thoughts to consider here, Joel?
Ask yourself the question, am I living life on my terms? Am I living life on my terms? And live life on your terms.
What are your terms? Determine those. We're in a great question, great comments, great conversations. We're gonna actually please go ahead and leave any comments, feedback for us. We'll make sure Joel gets it. Of course, we love it when you guys like and subscribe and share the podcast. That really helps us reach a larger audience, wherever that might be. We are on Amazon, Spotify, Apple, YouTube, you name it. We're all on all those different platforms. So we appreciate you guys coming along with us for the ride. Joel, thank you again for being on the Business Roundtable podcast. It was a pleasure having you.
Thanks, David.
Thanks, everybody, for listening. Take care. Until next time, be well, everybody.